So, welcome to the session. So, we have read up to page 96 on this book, the second edition. So, Sutra number 64, we had read up till Sutra number 64 the last time. Let us go on forward. Sutra number 65. Human beings made in the image of God also have the three qualities: will, love, intelligence. These three qualities exist in every person in varying degrees of development. So, little reminder, the previous sutras, Master was number one, he told us that there are three great qualities or three divine qualities. So, divine love, divine power, and divine intelligence. Divine power, also known as divine will. We had understood them in detail. Also, Master had made an effort to show us that in all the major religions, he talked about Christianity, Hinduism, Islam. He had shown that all these three aspects are recognized and given specific names. In the Indian system, the Hindu system, for example, they are also given personas, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, and so on. So you remember, all that we have covered in earlier sessions. If you have missed the earlier sessions, please, the recordings are available free. You may go through them. Okay, now Sutra number 65. So, what Master is telling us now is not only God, but we human beings made in the image of God also have these three qualities. Actually, when you say that we are children of God, correct? Like, or if you might have come across these sayings in the Bible, I think it says, let us make, that God said, let us make man in our image. Or another saying is, another quotation from the Bible is, so God created man in his own image. Now, what does it mean? Does it mean that we are created in God's image, therefore God also has one nose, two eyes, two ears, etc.? No, that is not the true us. Those are our bodies. Who's the true us? The soul. Now, so what Master is telling us is that I, the soul, we, the souls, you, the soul, are made in the image of God and have these three qualities. Essentially, our basic fundamental nature is these three qualities: divine will, divine love, and divine intelligence. And in the Indian system, if you have come across the term Sachidanand, have you come across that? Sachidanand. So Sat usually refers to the will aspect. Chit refers to the intelligence aspect, and Anand refers to the love aspect. So Sachidanand also now means the same three qualities. Yeah, and that is why Sachidanand is used for human beings. You are Sachidanand, something like that. Now, Master says that we have these three essential qualities. Now, what Master tells us next is that these exist in every person. So, in me, you, etc., everybody. If the world has say 7 point something billion people, every person, these three qualities exist, but in varying degrees of development. Somebody may have more will and less love, maybe less intelligence. Somebody may have more love, not so much of will and intelligence, etc., etc., etc. And I'm sure you've seen, if you look at people around you, people in your life, everybody has these three qualities in different degrees, right? I hope you can find agreement with this. And that is what makes us unique. Each of us is unique because the quantum of will or development of will, quantum of development of love, quantum of development of intelligence in each of us is different. It's not the same. Also, because it's in various degrees and we haven't reached the ultimate level, although we are made in the image of God, we are not God. What's the difference? In the case of God, each of these qualities are at a very, very high level. If you remember in previous sutras, we talked about omniscient, omniprovident, omnipotent. You remember? And the word omni meant infinitely. So, in the case of God, the will aspect is infinitely developed. The love aspect, intelligence aspect, all are infinitely developed and they are in balance. We are yet to get there, but that is our goal. We also are destined to become gods. That is our, long term goal, very, very long term goal, maybe thousands of incarnations away. We need to develop these three qualities to a very high degree and in a balanced manner. And I think I've talked about it many times. Master Choa used to refer to Lord Dattatreya. Dattatreya. He's a saint with three heads, who's usually shown with three heads. And Master used to talk about it that, these three heads show the three aspects, the three qualities: will, intelligence, and love. And he symbolizes high development and balance. And that is the goal for each one of us. All right. Okay, let's go on. The next one is a little long. So we'll do para by para. Sutra number 66. There are saints, yogis, and lay people. Lay people meaning ordinary people who have experienced oneness with God. Qualitatively, this is true. Quantitatively, this is true to a very minute degree. Truth must be understood qualitatively and quantitatively. You see, now what is the meaning of this qualitative versus quantitative? This is one of the great things that personally I can say, Master has opened my mind in this regard by giving this qualitative, quantitative terms. You see, normally we tend to think of, for example, we are talking about honesty. Now we will say, this person is honest. This person is not honest. But you see, it is not so simple. It is not so binary. It is not like on or off, like a switch. It is either on or off. But have you seen a dimmer? Dimmer yet? Where you can vary or like you're listening to the sound on your phone. You can increase the volume, you can reduce the volume. You can also make it full and you can make it mute. So it doesn't go, it's not like an on off button that either it is mute or it is at full volume. You are able to vary, there is a question of degree. It is not yes, no, on, off, true, false, correct, incorrect. No, so what Master is telling us is that many people, and maybe each of us also has to some extent experienced oneness with God. Now, with lay people, that experience is that oneness is very minute. With a yogi, it is little better because that is what the yogi is doing in his practices. With a saint, a holy saint, or a holy master, that degree is much higher. So it is like very small, slightly bigger. It's like our spiritual cord. Spiritual cord essentially is a measure of our connection with the higher soul, and through the higher soul, the connection with God. So you can scan that and see. So this is important. On the spiritual path, one has to avoid binaries. Binaries meaning yes, no, on, off, correct, incorrect, connected, not connected. It is always a question of degree. It is a question of quantity. How much there is connection. Everybody is connected. In the previous sutra, what did it say? We are made in the image of God. Now the question is how accurate. Now there is a question of degree. There is a question of quantity. Now, this is a important concept to understand and think over. And when you look at it in life, in every situation with every person and so on, you will see that this applies to all aspects of life. So, for example, we are supposed to practice the virtues. You remember loving kindness, non injuriousness, generosity, non stealing. honesty, non-lying, industriousness, non-laziness, and moderation, non-excessiveness. There, these again, there is a question of degree, a question of quantity. How much loving kindness? How much injuriousness? Yeah. And luckily, because we are we have the background of pranic healing, so we understand size. For us, it is not just chakra is there, but chakra size. If you have done, in basic pranic healing, you learn to scan the size of the chakra. In advanced pranic healing, you also learn to scan the activation. Spiritual cord. You know how to scan the spiritual cord. Because of that, we are lucky that we can quickly appreciate this quantitative and qualitative aspects. Yeah. Okay, let's read further. These saints, yogis, and lay people, if they were to achieve a high degree of oneness with the planetary logos, their bodies would die instantly. How much more for the solar logos? How much more for the absolute supreme God? The planetary logos or planetary God told Moses, "You cannot see my face, for no one can see me and live." There are very few exceptions to this rule, and MCKS is not one of the few exceptions. Yeah. So I hope the language I hope is simple and so on. But what the point that master is trying to make is that this minute degree is okay, because if it were to get higher than that, our bodies are not prepared. They cannot handle it. You see, it is like you take a something that has to be plugged into 220 volt. Our normal electrical supply, that is domestic supply, is 220 volt. Now you take that and you plug it into a 22 kilovolt supply. What do you think will happen? Immediately your device will be burnt. So same way, this power, this energy is too much. We cannot handle it. We are not prepared sufficiently. And that is the role of the spiritual hierarchy. That is you remember, we have gone through sutras where master said that all these, the spiritual hierarchy, every person in that is a spiritual transformer. So that very, very high, that 22 kilovolt electricity is needed to be stepped down to our 220 volt requirement. So that is the role of the hierarchy. They step it down. We cannot handle it directly. It needs to be stepped down. I hope this is making sense to you. Okay, if it's not, please do post a message, or later we can talk about it in the group. Sutra number 67. The soul, its subtle vehicles and its physical body must be given very minute dosages of intense spiritual energy, of very minute dosages of oneness with God. The capacity of the soul and its vehicles and its physical body must be gradually developed. Too much intense divine energy, too much divine oneness may cause the body to become sick, to become permanently damaged, or to die. Again, I hope the language is simple enough. So, again, what Master is now inspiring us or motivating us is that, too much divine energy you cannot handle. It will cause problems. So, what you need to do is to develop your capacity. You need to develop your capacity. How do you develop your capacity? Through your inner purity. I mean, essentially, I would say through the Arhatic Yoga pillars or practice of Arhatic Yoga pillars. Because when you do inner purification, when you do the meditations, when you do service, you know what service does? It builds muscles in your spiritual body, it makes it stronger. And then to improve connection, there is the pillar one of Arhatic Yoga: devotion and reverence to Supreme God and spiritual teacher. You see, there are many, many paths. I think in the beginning of the book, we talked about many different schools of yoga. But the Arhatic Yoga path is highly optimized. It ensures that you progress fast, but you also progress in a safe way. It is rare to find a Arhatic yogi who has been following the instructions. You see, there are sometimes people violate the instructions, but if they follow the instructions, they are completely protected. And the key is regular practice. As you do regular practice as given in the Arhatic yoga school, you you develop your capacity, and you keep increasing your oneness in minute dosages. Both things will happen. So that is why Arhatic yoga is highly, highly recommended. And I hope most of us are already on practicing Arhatic yogis. If not, please make it a goal, short term goal, that I must become an Arhatic yogi. All right. Sutra number 68. Based on the principle of interconnectedness and principle of oneness, one can have access to power, love, and intelligence. Note the power is in capital P, love is in capital L, intelligence capital I. So basically, Master is talking about divine power, divine love, divine intelligence, the three aspects of Supreme God. Quantitatively, this is true to a minute degree. Even this minute excess and minute dosages of divine power, divine love, and divine intelligence manifest as incredible phenomena called miracles by the masses. Master means the ordinary average people. So, maybe you want to quickly flip back, refer Sutras 31, 32. That is where we were introduced to the concept of the principle of interconnectedness and principle of oneness. Yeah. So again, Master just talked about it in the previous sutras. So I think we will understand. Again, there is the issue of qualitative and quantitative. Yeah. So everyone has access to divine power, divine love, and divine intelligence. The question is, how big is the connection? How much is being downloaded? All of us understand the internet and download. So let me use modern terms. So how much you can download will depend on the bandwidth available to you. And what is the bandwidth available to you? It shows the connection, the degree of connection you have with your higher soul, and through the higher soul to Supreme God. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing Master says is, you see, it's like this: the higher or greater your spiritual connection, the greater the downpour of spiritual energy, right? Divine light, divine love, divine power. Now, when Master says minute, he is saying as compared to the source, as compared to what is available. You see, when you look at the quantum of divine light, divine love, and power at the source meaning Supreme God, that is infinite. So, as compared to that, even a great saint is able to get only a minute quantity. But as compared to ordinary humans, people who have Master uses the term, he says, the spiritual cord of the ordinary person is thinner than a spider's, the thread of a spider's web. Now you know how thin that is. It is thinner than one hair of your head. So as compared to that, a holy guru or a spiritual teacher whose spiritual cord is, let's say, bigger than his head, And the average person's spiritual cord is so thin that you cannot even see it. So that is tremendous. But as compared to the source, minute. Now, because as compared to the ordinary person, this is so big, it leads or it provides extraordinary abilities. Now, when I say extraordinary, I don't mean mystical or anything like that. What I mean is that these are not ordinary. The average ordinary person cannot do them. So for example, intuition, for example, intellect, for example, control over the bodies. You must have heard stories of yogis. There was this great yogi who could not breathe for hours at end. And their ability to project force, their ability to project things around them, to influence things around them. And why go far? Just think of pranic healing. To a ordinary person who has not heard about pranic healing, pranic healing seems miraculous. In fact, when Master wrote his first book, he called it The Miracles Through Pranic Healing. Because to an ordinary person, it seems miraculous. What? You know, I remember seeing in the US media, some news channel, there was a coverage of pranic healing. So they started off with getting well with a wave of your hand. Is it possible? So the presenters themselves found it very miraculous. And just think about it. The person who doesn't understand how pranic healing works, to say that I am sitting in my house, you are sitting in your house, and I will heal your headache or your backache or your diabetes or something, that is quite miraculous. Yeah. So that is why we need to be very grateful to Master Choa, because without our needing to develop our spiritual cord extraordinarily, he gave us this miraculous ability of pranic healing. Okay, there's one line left. Let's read that. Saint Augustine said, miracles do not happen in contradiction to nature, but to that which is known to us about nature. So again, pranic healing is an example. Most people, they don't know about prana, they don't know about healing, they don't know about the chakras, they don't know about the energy body. Now, just because most people don't know doesn't mean it does not exist. So when we do it and the person doesn't understand why or how this is happening, that is what, so that person may think that what is happening is in contradiction to nature. But no, it is not in contradiction to nature. It is in contradiction to what we have known about nature. When you didn't know about prana, when you didn't know about chakras, when you do that experiment of sensitizing your hands, one of the first things you learn in your basic pranic healing class, it seems miraculous. It seems like a contradiction to nature. But then when you understand why that is happening, how that is happening, then you say, okay, I didn't know this part about nature. Now that I know it, nothing miraculous. It is just scientific. Correct? I think this is a good place to stop.